Good morning, everyone. Alert. Good. This week's reading from Rays of the One Light. I should introduce myself. My name is Badri. With my wife, Gita, we're visiting here, and we're your surprise speakers today. It's a surprise for us, too. This week's reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Week 34, How Should We Meet Our Tests? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we considered Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness after his baptism by John. We discussed the question, does Satan exist? All of us experience temptation of one kind or another in our lives. Some of us frequently, others only occasionally. Whether temptation comes to us from our own subconscious or from outside ourselves is secondary to the fact that it does come and that we must deal with it. More important, then, is the question how to deal with it. In fact, how to deal with tests of any kind. Martin Luther flung an ink pot at the devil who had appeared to test him. A dark stain on the wall of Luther's cell is pointed out to tourists in support of this story. Unfortunately, our trials are not often so summarily dismissed. As a fellow monk once said to Swami Kriyananda, speaking of Satan, if only I could get my hands on him. Jesus, during his temptation in the wilderness, overcame them, and thereby set an example for all time by clinging the more determinedly to God. As Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, darkness cannot be driven out of a room with a stick. Once you turn on the light, however, the darkness will vanish as though it had never been. Jesus manifested this principle. The Bible tells us, therefore, that at last the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In the Bhagavad Gita, the point is clarified further by the added explanation that there are three qualities in human nature: sattvic, or spiritually elevating; rajasic, or ego activating; and tamasic, or spiritually darkening. It is this triune aspect of human nature that the third chapter refers to with the words, as fire is hidden by smoke, as a mirror is dulled by rust, and as an embryo is enclosed in the womb, so is the indwelling self enveloped by desire. Yogananda explained that each of these examples describes one of the qualities, or gunas. Sattva guna, that which elevates our consciousness, can be freed of any identity with ego by a little puff of meditation and right affirmation. Rajaguna, which embroils the ego in restless activity, can be worked off with a little more and a little longer effort. Tamoguna, embracing as it does such mental states as laziness and stupidity, can only be outgrown in time since it inhibits even the desire for self-improvement. The example Jesus gave us was intended more for those in whom sattva guna is predominant. But if you yourself find elements in your consciousness that resist even the effort to cling to God in prayer and meditation, don't despair. Patience, as it has been well said, is the fastest path to God. As long as your efforts take you steadfastly in the right direction, you'll come out right in time. Remember Yogananda's words, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. If, however, your nature impels you, even against your will, to move in the wrong direction, toward egoic desires and away from God, strive at least to detach yourself mentally from your wrong actions which are induced by habit. The time will come when their own stored-up energy will tire and diminish. At that time, if you have not contributed to that energy by your consenting will, you will find it possible at last to redirect your energies more constructively. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Good morning, everyone. Is this on? Okay. I thought I would start with just a little poem from Whispers and then move into sharing a little bit. As Badri said, my name is Gita, and I'll share a little bit more about myself in a moment. But let's take this poem together. Listen to this. May my spark commingle with thy great spark. May it twinkle in all eyes. Bless me that I may swim in the sea of souls. Let me rush with thee on avalanches of noble desire. Let me feel thee in the budding hopes of all roseate minds, and in the silence of all saints. Let the tears of my sympathy commingle with the drops in all tearful eyes. Together, thou and I will dance on the wavelets of feelings. We will cheer every heart with divine delight. Let us throb in the life of all beings. So the topic today is how to face life's challenges. And I thought that was pretty poetic because I am the daughter of Padma and Hriman here. And so many of you know me for many years. I was reflecting on this topic a little bit and thought to myself, 23 years ago, I was actually reminded of this yesterday by Suryadas, but 23 years ago, in a little temple on Roosevelt Way, when said parents began as your spiritual directors, I was a mere 12 years old, and I was invited up to say hello to everybody. And at the age of 12, that is mortifying. I was totally, fallen apart on the inside, because 12 years old, you're just so painfully self-conscious. So 23 years later, my dad sent us an email just a couple days ago and said, hey, guess what? You guys are coming. Why don't you speak at Sunday service? It's like, and the topic, how to meet life's challenges? Hello. Here it is, right in front of you. You just say yes to it and go for it. No, really, it was a very sweet suggestion on the part of my parents. Badri and I are really fortunate to be able to serve at Ananda Village. But it's been although I was born into this, it's been quite a winding road to get to the place that I am today. And there have been these amazing points along that road, just like all of our journeys, where, I had a choice to move one direction or another direction. And at each of those points on reflection, I realized that I had some really good advice from Swami Kriyananda, our founder, that helped ultimately to direct my life to where it is today. And I thought maybe that could be helpful for some of us as we face life's challenges. Before I dive into that first deep moment where that changed my life, I wanted to share a little bit about growing up at Ananda. I was born at Ananda Village, which at the time was the only Ananda community that existed. And we had a school like there is here in Seattle. And there's a reason that Master called his schools, we call them Living Wisdom schools, and originally it was How to Live schools. The reason being that the whole purpose of the education system is to teach children how to live in the world successfully and find their highest, best self, which means how to face challenges when they appear, as they always do. If they didn't, we probably wouldn't be here. That's why we're here. So we really, right from the get-go, I was given the incredible gift of a toolbox full of ways to approach life's challenges, challenging people, challenging circumstances, fears of insecurity, all those things that we all deal with in life. I got at least the starter toolkit right there from the get-go. There's a really deep emphasis on compassion for others that you learn through this education system. It's very experiential based, so you learn it by, you're not nice. And how does that feel? You are nice. Oh, that feels better. Someone's nice to you. Hey, I like that. And you really begin to build that toolbox. We also did learn to meditate. I mean, one of my ultimate childhood memories is going out to this field where there's a little patch of trees. And this was maybe in the second grade. And we each climbed a tree and we hugged the tree. Talk about tree huggers. We hugged the tree. And then our teachers talked us through a visualization meditation. And this was something we did with some regularity. But through, hugging a tree and closing your eyes at the ripe age of 7, you really connected with something deeper in yourself and recognized that there was a place you could go inside that brought peace and that brought joy, and that it wasn't always only attached to the things on the outside. So I was really lucky. I got to do some of that as a child, but I still was a teenager at a certain point. And that's when I met most of you. And as a teenager, of course, I have not one, but 2 ministers for parents. So I had to rebel. It's like a prerequisite of being a preacher's kid. I had to rebel. What's interesting for me is that Master Yogananda, he was always for me. There was never any question in my heart about that. I had a lot of beautiful spiritual moments, blessed moments in that childhood that I drew from, that led me to know that Master was for me. But this whole Ananda thing, that was my parents' thing. There, the music, it was very joyful, not very, as a teenager, you think that dark, you have a lot of emotions. And so you think that the things that bring out those emotions are what's real. And all this joy, it's not real. What's real is that really gritty, dark art and that heavy metal music. And so I, dove a little bit in that direction and explored the world for more than a decade. In that time, I did have the grace to take Kriya Yoga and began practicing Kriya Yoga, but I struggled endlessly trying to develop a meditation practice that was regular. Because when you're in the world and doing your thing, and it's really easy to have a reason not to meditate. I mean, it's really easy anywhere in the world to have that. But when you don't have other people around you who are meditating, it's even more easy to find a reason not to meditate. There's work to do, there's homework to do, there's that really awesome TV show that you're hooked on and you just have to watch one more episode. I mean, it's really silly, but there's so I spent a good decade struggling with developing a meditation practice. And I could feel that my life had little frays along the edges. It was like, I had the tools. I was able to work with those difficult managers, and I was able to be friendly to people who I just didn't really want to, but I could, find it in me, and I could feel that compassion. I had good friends, but there were these little edges that were sort of slowly unraveling in my life. And finally, they fell apart. And that was, this moment of test for me, where my whole life just sort of fell out from under me. And it turned out to be, of course, as many of those moments for all of us are, the greatest gift that was ever given to me. For a lot of years, I used to tell my parents, I'm really bummed. I'm not motivated to meditate because my life is so good. Why? I have happiness. Why am I, what do I need that for? I want it, but I don't want it enough. And then when the life just sort of, unraveled, I was smart enough to book a ticket to India right then, which, by the way, my father and Morley are leading a trip to India in the spring, and if you can, go. It was absolutely life-changing. But I booked this ticket to India, and there in India at the time was Swami Kriyananda. And I had the opportunity to speak with him alone at one point. Well, Jyotish and Devi were actually with me, but the rest of our pilgrimage group was not there, and I had this wonderful moment with him. And I asked him, what do I do? My life just sort of fell apart. And he looked at me and he said many things, but the power in what he said at that moment was, set your own spiritual sail and the rest will follow. I sat with that for a minute and, okay, that sounds really wise. How do I do that? So I got home, and it took a long time to figure out how to do that for me, and it would be different for all of us. But I took yoga teacher training, and I started to build a community around myself. I was living in San Francisco at the time, a community of at least, fellow yogis of all different paths, all different faiths, but we had that in common. So I started to build that. And then I started visiting the village a little bit. And then I realized at a point that I was as far as I could get by myself. I needed something more to take me to the next step of my life and to go deeper in what I knew really would give me happiness. And I decided, okay, I'm going to move to Ananda and I'm going to do this thing, because no longer do I think it's cheesy. I love the music. I love being happy. I want to go into that happiness now. I don't need the darkness. I get it now. And so I did that. I moved to Ananda, and that is setting my spiritual sail. Okay, I want to go deep, so now I'm going to surround myself with people who want to go deep too. And I mean, Badri is the family that you see in front of you, all of that is like the last 4 years in a nutshell. It was so fast, so rapid that, once I moved the sail to catch the breeze of Divine Mother, she just filled it up and it took off. And that's the trick. That's the spiritual journey, is that we, set the sail, move it till we find the divine breeze, and then let it fill us and move us forward. And that's what it did for me. So that is my best advice on on how to face those challenges, is move the sail a little bit until you catch the breeze, and let that breeze take you forward and take you deeper. I want to share just a moment about what we do at Ananda Village now, and then I'm going to pass the baton to my husband to share a little bit on the topic. I work at the Ananda Worldwide Sangha, which is focused on outreach for Ananda beyond any particular community. And I was invited to be their director of development there, which was perfect because it was using the decade or so experience that I had gained out in the world for something useful for Master. I was really grateful for that. And at the time when I arrived was the perfect time. There are no accidents. Because one other part of this not just being my parents' thing, but it being my thing, was a need to feel that I had peers in my age group. Although I really get along with everybody, we all sort of want to feel like we have friends in the same life circumstance that we are in. And for the first time in a very long time, there was a whole group of young people arriving at Ananda Village and really at Ananda everywhere. And that group had, before that there were some, certainly, but not so many, and not all in one big sort of energetic grouping. But when I arrived, it happened to coincide with that happening. And for the first time, I could look around at my guru bhais and say, hey, people going through what I'm going through at this moment in their life. It was very magnetic to help me to, take the work and move it forward. So in thinking about that group has started to really coalesce energetically. And across Ananda, there's this need to pass the baton. It's a relay race. And the founding people have carried the baton for a very long time. And they need to start to pass it. And they want to start to pass it. And they want to make sure that there's somebody there to get it. And I'm here to tell you there are people there to get it. There's many of us there to pick up the baton. And that group is coalescing around how do we prepare for that? How do we go deep in our meditation, in our practice? How do we prepare for the challenges that will face us? Originally Ananda had many challenges. We had financial challenges, we had legal challenges, just like Master had in the founding of his organization originally. But what challenges will we have? We don't know yet. And we need to prepare for that. We also need to prepare to take this message that Master brought, which is to change global consciousness, to bring a new sense of what spirituality is, that it's about you and going deep inside, self-realization. It's about your personal experience of God. And that's sort of, groundbreaking stuff. So that's a lot bigger than any one organization. But we need to be ready to start to share that and help Master in his mission of bringing these tools to people that they might find a deep inner happiness. So we are calling ourselves a wave, and really we're all in that wave. Jyotish took that concept and in his amazing way stepped way back and said, yeah, we're the third wave. I was thinking, yeah, there's Swami, then there's Jyotish, then there's us. No, there's Babaji bringing Kriya to Lahiri Mahashai to share it with householders, to bring spirituality to the home in a whole new way. And then there's Master to the West, to bring these teachings to the West, to help us in our age of materialism, to find our own center point, that whatever, we are developing in the world around us, we can do it from a dharmic place. And then there's us, there's Swamiji and all of us. And what we are doing is taking those teachings and showing the world that by example, what it means to be a yogi in the world. What it means to have family, what it means to be a monastic, but what it means to serve the world, to go to work at your cubicle and still find God right there. Lahiri Mahashai was an accountant, for goodness sake, just like my dad. So we're in that wave, and this sort of group of people coming, ready to take the baton and take it forward, has now recognized that we're all in one wave, but we're just bringing up the next ebb of it. There's the guys on the crest, and then here we are coming in to grab the baton and to bring it forward. And that's what's happening at Ananda, across Ananda. So, bless you all.
That's happening right now.
And that's what's happening.
Hello again. I'd like to pick up a little more on this topic, but before I do, I just want to introduce myself again. My name's Badri, and with Gita, she talked a little about, we live at Ananda Village, and I have been at Ananda for about 7 years. A little more than 7 years ago, I visited and essentially moved at the same time to Ananda from Southern California. I came for a summer program, and just after a day or two was really changed by my experience. At Ananda, I was already really devoted to Yogananda, to meditation, and as I said, I was just profoundly inspired by really what you see here in your community and your Sangha in the spiritual life. The rich blessings that come from that way of life appealed to me and spoke to me in a way that nothing else did or has yet, and so I was moved to move. And after a few years of various happenings, met Gita on one of her visits back, and rather quickly, as she noted, we were married and now have our family that you saw earlier. So we thank you for blessing our son with us and being a part of our spiritual family here. I think it's fitting that Padma and Riman stay up on stage because it's kind of a roast, I guess, unintentional roast for them. With the young ones, we don't get to travel as much as we might like in other circumstances, but we always feel the connection to our spiritual family up here in Seattle and elsewhere in the world. So it's really a treat for us to be on vacation, as it were. And as Gita noted, today's topic, how should we measure tests, was poignantly offered to us by Hriman and Padma just a couple of short days ago. And I feel really fortunate to share my life with Gita, with a partner who, in the spirit of Swami Kriyananda, says yes to such things and says yes to life. You know, she mentioned to me, and I'll roast her a little too, but just last night, she wasn't like I, so much up for what are we doing at Sunday service exactly? We said, do you want us to just do the sermon? And so here we are. But she said, you know what? She said, I'm not that comfortable doing it, but that's what Swami Kriyananda would want me to do. And I thought, that's the right attitude. And be it Swami Kriyananda, Yogananda, God himself, what's the difference? Your higher self, what are you saying in every moment, in every test? This is a small test to speak in front of you all, but in life, we're constantly faced with tests. I found it amusing that in that reading, Swami says, I won't open to it, but he says, some of us are faced with tests frequently, and some of us only occasionally. And I thought, who are those occasional people? Certainly they don't live at Ananda, or they're not truth seekers. And really, who of us is not constantly faced with tests from the subconscious, as Swamiji writes, or in outer circumstances in life? And indeed, how boring would life be without tests? We know, certainly, as spiritual seekers, that the tests are where we grow, personal growth, what have you. It's where we get joy, it's where we get inspiration, it's where we get strength in life, is through our tests. But, it's really where the rubber meets the road, spiritually speaking. And for me, certainly I've faced tests, but when I look at those around me and I look at the life of Swami Kriyananda, how should we face our tests? I'll just share one brief story with you from my first days at Ananda Village that I've always spoke to. We all have these sort of formative experiences that come out in different ways, but one thing that really struck me, especially first coming to Ananda, was the level of joy, certainly with people, but not only that, but where you saw it really come out in times of distress or in times of need or test. They had us working on a project in this summer camp. It's just maybe less than a week. I had been at Ananda, and we were digging this trench. It's hot summer, and we were just doing outdoor physical work. It was fun. It was energetic. And as so happens, we broke this big water line really quickly. And so here's a test on the physical plane. It's not like super emergency, but we've got to get this water line shut off. We've got to do a repair. We had no idea what to do. We didn't really know Ananda, and so we didn't know how to deal with this on the physical plane, or even energetically. Do we ohm the pipe, that's broken? Who do we ask for help? What do we do? Well, I knew Ananta, okay, for those of you that know Nayaswami Ananta, and I knew this guy had a grip on the physical plane, and a heck of a lot more. So I ran up to the upper garden, and we were all a mess. I said, Ananta, we broke this water line, and what do we do? And, I thought, I didn't know if they would be upset or, how we would handle it. He just, with this big grin and all of this energy and joy, just barreled all of 6'5", 250 pounds of him, barreled down the hill. We were all standing around, not knowing what to do. He dove into the mud, and he started bailing water, and he started telling us what to do. And he just faced it in the moment, right there, with energy, with joy. He didn't think about it. He didn't commiserate with us. He didn't get all excited. He just dealt with it, with energy and with joy. And I've always reflected, that's one way to meet a test. And I think Ananta has a few years of meditation under his belt, of Kriya Yoga, of right attitudes, and that's why you see someone like that constantly in that state of joy, in that state of energy. So as much as we can meet our tests that way, sometimes we may not. Let's be honest. A real test comes, and are we able to face it with energy and joy? Perhaps not. But this reading was interesting. If you didn't have a chance to tune into it on a deeper level, Swami's saying, as it says in the Gita, cling thou to me. If you can't face your test with joy, just try to resist temptation. Resist going into that despondency or into that spiritually dead state. Just face the test, at the very least. I have another friend who's a legend at Ananda for over 40 years, just a deep soul. He's been through many struggles and tests, I know, Naya Swami Prakash. And I know for many years he was battling tests, maybe 10 or 12 years. He said that his only mantra or his prayer was, just don't leave. That's what he told himself over and over again. Just don't leave. Just don't leave. And you look at what a high soul like that has done. He didn't have, I'm sure he was meditating. I'm sure he found some energy and some joy to face his tests, but he just knew, cling to God, cling to Yogananda, because that's our lifeline, and to face tests at the very least with desperation, if nothing else, but with conviction. The other thing that Gita touched on is kind of this new wave of energy. I don't want to go into this, but if you look around in the world, these are pretty dark times. You don't have to be a cynic or a pessimist to say, yes, indeed, these are dark times. There's violence, there's suffering, there's greed, there's all manner of these things in the world right now. But is that where we choose to go with our energy? We live in light. Look around you and you find, as Yogananda said, where there's light, and as the Bible says, the darkness can't exist. So we focus our energy on light. And when we can, there's energy, there's joy there, there's light. And there's a new wave of energy, and this is not exclusive to Ananda, although it's manifesting in really beautiful ways with young people, with people of all ages, with families, with people who are spiritually seeking on a deep level, not just for themselves, but to bring light into the world. And that's the mission of our times and of our age, is to work with energy, to work with these techniques of meditation that we have, that Yogananda has given us, and to find joy in that. I've been meditating on a quote from Sri Yukteswar recently from the autobiography of a yogi. He says, you'll tire of everything but the joy of God. When you realize that God is with you at every minute, then that bubbling, sparkling, refreshing spring of joy will be with you. And so I think for those of us that are here, we probably already have tired of everything but the joy of God. We're still working with those challenges a little, but we're trying to realize that God is with us at every minute. And that spring of joy, that bubbling, sparkling, refreshing spring, it makes me want to bottle it. That spring of joy is with us. And so, as Yogananda said, what comes of itself, let it come. And face it. We'll face the tests of life. And they will come, certainly. I don't think we're the ones that see them only occasionally. We're here to grow spiritually. We're here to find joy. And as that beautiful, simple song said of Swami Kriyananda's, lift your boat and strength once more, and soon your boat will come ashore. God bless you all.
I'd like to give you an opportunity now to make an offering.